At this point, I thought I'm for sure gonna have this baby on the highway. I felt like I was high. Wow, things were so intense. I remember just thinking like, why did I decide to not take the drugs? It honestly feels like just the other day we were doing this for Sage's birth. Yep. And here we are with another newborn.
Baby number 2. Time went very, very quick.
So fast. Like, I can't believe Sage is 3. If you guys have not watched it yet, I posted the official birth vlog video. Ooh. I'll link that down. Yeah. Ooh.
Watch at your own risk.
I'll link that down below. But for those of you who want more of like a chatty talk through style video, that's what this is.
Yeah, this is a little more PG-13 compared to the R-rated.
And also Matt's perspective as well. And just like now going through that experience for the second time, just kind of talking about like what we were thinking throughout it, and maybe some other pieces of information that you wouldn't know from the birth vlog.
Yeah, sounds
it's
fun.
Like the behind the scenes. Let's like rewind back a bit and just talk about like the birth plan. We're living in a new house. We're further away from the hospital.
We had the same midwife team, which is because they were amazing. So,
and I'll link like everybody. It's York Region Midwives. Was the team that we used, and then we went to the South Lake Hospital, which is in Newmarket, Ontario. Amazing hospital, amazing midwife.
Yeah, both experiences were really good.
And then also we had Sage to think about. You obviously don't know when you're going to go into labor, so depending on if it was a weekday or a weekend, we had different scenarios planned out. We knew that my younger sister Chloe was going to be the one to basically grab Sage wherever she was, or if I went into labor in the middle of the night, she would just come to our house and stay here. Let's just talk about the experience of going overdue. And I use quotations because I do believe that in our society, we think the due date is the due date, and that is when baby is supposed to come. And that is really just an estimated date. And I remember being told by my midwife at the time, like for first time moms, it is so unlikely that you're gonna go before or at your due date. You're most likely gonna go towards like that 41 week mark. And it can stress moms out and they think they're late, something's wrong. Nope, your body's just preparing for birth. And that estimated date that the doctor gave you may not be the same date that your body has or the baby has. With all that said, once I hit 41 weeks, there was different things we had to keep in mind than last time. I had Sage at 40 weeks and 4 days, I believe.
A couple days over.
But I didn't actually hit the 41 week mark. So this time around, we had to think of extra things. We actually did have to have an induction date booked. I say have to, like we chose to have that just as backup because it's easier to cancel one than to make one last minute. And then we also had to do things like schedule an extra ultrasound, and we had multiple non-stress tests. And basically that's all just to ensure baby and mommy are
healthy.
Good. Yeah.
All the checks that we did during that extra period, they were all good. So we felt good to allow it to go over, kind of push the induction date as far out as we could, hoping that it would just, he would come on his own accord, which he did.
Honestly, I was feeling really great besides like some awful rib pain that I was having, which go watch my last week pregnant video if you want to know more about that. Apparently it's really common. Honestly, the most stressful thing about being overdue was just everyone else's reactions. Like, when's your induction date? You're still pregnant. Oh my goodness, like that baby's never going to come out. All of the outside noise was what was stressful, not actually what was happening inside my body. So honestly, a little piece of advice, don't tell people your due date. Just say, I'm due in October.
Due middle of October, something like that would be good.
Guys, getting heavy. Yeah, tell me about it. I carried him for 9 months.
It's bigger now.
Rock. Oh, Oakley came on a Monday, October 23rd at night or in the evening. I started actually getting contractions Saturday night, I believe. I'm like, am I getting a contraction? And then they disappeared. So I didn't think much of it, but they were definitely different like than Braxton Hicks. Braxton Hicks to me are very different than contractions. They're more like up top, where contractions for me anyways are lower. Those faded away. I didn't think anything of it. And then Sunday night, I think we were just about to go to bed. It was 11:30 p.m.
Yeah, should have gone to bed early.
Yeah, I closed my eyes and I legit am like, oh, I felt the first contraction.
Yeah, I feel like I just closed my eyes and then you woke me up being like, oh, I'm having contractions. And I think I was like, are they like real contractions, or is it just like, is it like enough to get up, or is it something that's like, okay, try to sleep through it?
Yeah.
But you felt like you were strong enough to be like, oh no, I think we need to get up.
Pause. So Sunday night, After like an hour or so, they were picking up, getting a little stronger. And I thought, if this is the real deal, I want to start figuring out like who's coming to watch Sage. Are we going to my parents? Because, you know, I kept hearing second babies come faster, and I knew we were further away from the hospital, so I didn't want to wait till the last minute. I wanted to be like more like
closer to where we were in case things really picked up quick, because you never know.
Yeah.
Right.
So I texted my sister. It was probably after midnight.
Probably. So like around midnight.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
So she came, but by the time we got to my parents, it was like 2 a.m. We also called the doula. The doula followed us. You know, and at this time I'm thinking like, this is for sure like the real deal. Like baby is coming tonight. They're not slowing down. Contractions are picking up.
Yeah, they're kind of coming like sometimes every minute, sometimes every couple of minutes, sometimes every
was, like,
30
sporadic.
seconds. It was like all over the map.
There was a couple of them that I did have to breathe through. I could still talk, but I had to breathe through them. And honestly, like, you kind of forget what contractions were like. So I thought, oh, this feels pretty painful. Little did I know. We get to my mom's, they leave, we're hanging out there. I think at this point, like, you were pretty tired. We had the doula there, and so we both said, go upstairs and take a nap, you know?
Yeah. And they weren't coming like very consistently. I think it was like, oh, go up and try to sleep, because we didn't know when it was going to happen. I'm not the best sleeper, so I went up to try to sleep and just like laid there. Because of course you're thinking about, okay, what's going to happen? How's this all going to play out? And then I think maybe an hour later or so, I just remember hearing you come into the room. And I was kind of like, oh, that's weird. Like,
we had the baby already. We're good. That was about 4:30 a.m. Basically, I was downstairs with the doula, and we were just kind of doing different stretches and stuff just to see if we could get things picked up again. But basically, my contractions were dying down, which was a little disappointing because I felt bad that I like got my sister to come to our house. My parents left in the middle of the night. Like, I felt so guilty. I thought it was like the day. I mean, it was the day, just not that time of the day. So basically, my doula and I made the call for us to go back to bed, save our energy in case, you know, contractions start coming on stronger, and just kind of rest while they were slowing down. They basically came to a stop.
Yeah, we came to a stop. So you got a couple hours sleep, which I think was good. We had to go to the hospital that morning at 10 anyways to do an ultrasound and a stress test. So kind of worked out that we ended up getting a little bit of sleep, and then we had to go to the hospital
The next, that
morning, like a couple hours later at 10 o'clock. I think we wanted them to check to see if you were dilated, but they actually said, oh, because you're not having any contractions or nothing's going on right now, like there's no point. So we're like, oh, okay. They let us go. All the checks came out good, and we just decided, instead of going back to her parents, we're like, well, let's go back to our house. I know it's a little bit farther away. We just thought it's a little more comfortable. Give us an opportunity to come back and nap a little bit, which was, I think...
You napped too, right?
I just laid in bed. But
okay.
I
I definitely, it's like my body knew, like, you get some sleep. I woke up around 2:30. I came downstairs. Matt was still upstairs. I made myself a snack. I think I had a bowl of cereal. After I had a snack, my contractions were starting to pick up, but then randomly they started to die down. And then I remembered this thing called the mile circuit, which my midwife team did recommend for me to do, like if I was having contractions. And it basically helps get baby into the right position. And if you've never done it before, it's like a 90-minute thing. It's like the longest thing. You hold, I think, 3 different positions for 30 minutes each. So I know, I was like, okay, I guess like contractions are dying down. I'll try this smile circuit. I do the first one, which I think is child's pose. I go down child's pose. I have a mild contraction and I feel a pop. And then I'm like, was that my water? I get up, I feel a little bit of like water trickle down, and I look at Matt. He was down at this point. I'm like, I think my water just broke. I didn't know this, but when my water broke with Sage, it was like a gush, but I also wasn't as far along as this time. So I learned later that after 41 weeks, there's less like liquid in there, so it's not going to be as much of a dramatic like shh. So I went to the washroom, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was my water. We thought, oh, we're going to take Sage to swim. We have to pick her up from daycare, take her to swim. And obviously this changed everything.
Yeah, I think once that, you said, I think my water just broke. I was like, okay. I then messaged Nikole's sister to be like, hey, I think you need to make your way back up this way because I think...
Again,
yeah, because I said, I think Nicole's the labor's starting to happen, getting the contractions.
Did you say she texted you? Because she's like, I'm 10 minutes away.
Can I stop at the grocery store to grab some stuff? And I was like, oh no, I think Nicole's water broke, so probably best if you just come right here. Yeah, by the time Chloe got here, you just started having those, like the real contractions, and I just remembered from Sage what those were.
And what they sound like.
Oh, I'm like, that's a real one. From when you had one of those with Sage to like Sage coming out, was like an hour.
I was already in the car because I was like, we gotta go. Like, I just could feel how intense they were getting. And so I knew like, we gotta go. But I guess I was in the car and Chloe had checked on GPS to be like, you better go straight to the hospital because it's going to be like 40 minutes because it was rush hour traffic.
Yeah, it's like 5 p.m. Yeah, so pretty much we left the house, started driving, called the doula and said, okay, start making your way. We called or paged the midwife team who called us on the drive, and then while we were driving, the midwife just wanted to talk to Nikole, ask some questions just to make sure, like, oh, is this real? And then I think you had a contraction while talking to her, and she's like, oh, okay, I'm going to start making my way to the hospital because it sounds like you're really progressing. So we're like, okay.
But she was really happy because my water broke and I was having contractions.
Yeah.
She wanted to talk to me because she wanted to hear how I was sounding, and it gives them a good indication of how far along you are.
I think like she even said, okay, I'm going to make my way. And we told her we're about 40 minutes away. So longest drive ever. I think it's like a long drive. You're like, okay, 45 minutes.
I was looking at that GPS timer and I was like, okay, 30 minutes, 25 minutes. And I remember just thinking like, baby, stay in there. Like it was the most, I can imagine for you. For me, it was obviously intense, like pain-wise. I was playing my calming music and just breathing through contractions, pretty intense. And at one point, there was a bus lane. At one point, I think I was going to tell you, like, take the bus line. Like, we got to go.
Red light.
And if you know Davis Drive, it is the worst street to be on. Street. At this point, I thought, I'm for sure going to have this baby on the highway. Like, he's coming up.
Yeah, I had the same thought a couple of times. I was also thinking as we were like stopped at red lights and there's like cars parked beside us and you're having contractions, I was thinking like, what are these people thinking? If they like look over in the car and just see this girl,
So we get to the hospital and Matt doesn't even have time to park. You literally just like pulled up right to the front and
pulled up right to the front
left the car
door,
there.
Just left it parked there.
Wasn't there like a very pregnant mom?
There was there was a mom who had just had a kid.
Oh.
She had like the car seat there, and I was like, oh, we're next. That's her, we're next. But yeah, so then it's like left the car, got you out. We started going towards the door, and then I think like right there in front of the entry door, you just had like a contraction.
When you have like an active labor contraction, like you cannot move.
No.
You can't move, you can't talk. You just stop in your... Yeah, I'm just like outside the hospital.
Yeah.
So embarrassing.
A lot of people were really supportive. It's actually kind of like it's like a movie moment, where it's like people were like, oh yeah, you got this. There was a guy who was waiting in a taxi cab and he's just like, gives you the thumbs up, like, you got this, you can do it. A nice lady who was like, oh, can I get a wheelchair for you? And I was like, this girl is probably in her 80s. I was like, I think the wheelchair is for you. But she was like so kind, grabbed a wheelchair for you. And by that point, the midwife had come down to meet us there. And she had her own wheelchair ready for you, and we were just like, oh, we're already in one, let's go. I
remember we wheel into the hospital, and you're like running to the elevator.
She's like, go run to the elevator and like push the button so we don't have to wait, because it was, things were pretty active at that point.
I was just like in the lobby going, like so loud.
Yeah, it was intense.
I mean, in the moment, I didn't really care who was watching me, but you're just like, yep, this is happening. Yeah. Everyone knows, like, this very pregnant lady is about to pop out of it.
It was a relief because we got to the hospital. I mean, there was, like they said, lots of moments where we thought it might have been in the car. So
I was just happy to be there.
Being in the hospital, we knew, like, okay, we're going to get to the room. So we rushed up. Luckily, the midwife had already gotten a room for us ready, so you just went right into there. I went in there as well, dropped off the stuff. We kind of helped.
Was the car still parked up front?
Yeah, everything was parked up front, so I had to basically wait a couple of minutes to make sure you guys were all set, and then once I got the go-ahead, I went back down and moved the car into like the longer-term parking lot, and then I actually met the doula down at the front of the thing, and we both went up and boom, ran into the room. At
this point, I think I had a hospital gown on, which for Sage, I didn't even have time for one.
No, you had a hospital gown on, and you were sort of fully in active labor. I think you were kind of standing, swaying back and forth. You had the heart monitor around your belly to monitor the baby's heart, and you were kind of standing on the side of the bed.
It was the only position that felt comfortable. Same thing with Sage, like standing during those contractions, like there's no way I could sit down or lay on my back.
No. And by this point, it's about 6 o'clock.
Also, I did get checked once I got into the hospital, and I was between 7 and 8 centimeters. So very far along, pretty much.
It's the same as Sage. I think it was about 7 or 8.
Well, we left our house when I was 8 centimeters. So it was we went a little bit early.
Yeah. Okay.
Whew, guys, wow. Things were so intense. I remember just thinking like, why did I decide to not take the drugs again? Like, who thought this was a good idea? That being said, I'm so happy that I just listened to my body and just like took it contraction by contraction. This is probably the most intense part because obviously you are getting really close to pushing, and at this point I'm like in my own world. Mm-hmm. I was visualizing like a ball floating in the ocean, and like I was like in outer space, guys.
You were zen. She was really in like a zone. She just I felt like we didn't, almost like you were just there standing and sort of waiting, and then when you needed something you were like, press my hips, water, ice. It was
like robotic,
like,
almost.
Yeah, it's just like, I need this right now. And we were just sort of like letting you do your thing. You're a lot of swaying.
Yeah, I remember like
swaying, kind of
like a seance.
It was like you were in the, like I said, just like a very zen-like.
What did the midwife call it? She called it like the mom. It's like a name, like the swaying. I didn't do that with Sage.
Mom dance or pregnancy dance.
Or you just like
dance or something.
You're just like I felt like I was high. It's like I knew you guys were there, but also I was like in my own world. And it's funny because like our doula was so sweet. She was like, oh, like I can bring my camera and take some photos if you want. So she was taking some photos. Matt is like, I can see you once in a while like moving the vlog camera because you guys were just kind of waiting for. I was in my zone.
Different.
I wasn't like I was screaming for help or anything. I felt way more confident and trusting in my body this time around. Not really the week leading up beforehand, but like in that moment, I was like, I had a mission and I knew what I was doing and I was leaning into it. And it's like, I've done this before. I can do it again. Mm-hmm. And so I was aware of you guys, but also I was like, this is just me, myself, and baby right now. And the contractions were getting so intense at one point that I remember thinking in between contractions is usually like when the pain just stops. And I remember having this internal dialogue with myself thinking, this is the time that I'm going to do some deep belly breathing. Even though this is a very intense experience, the more I relax, the quicker baby is going to come out. Like my body's going to relax, baby's going to come down. And I started doing some just like deep pelvic floor breathing, just really relaxing everything instead of tightening up. I remember specifically the point where I guess it's called the transition point between like contractions and pushing, where I felt so weird. Well, and also the contractions were at the highest intensity. I was starting to feel nauseous. I was just feeling really out of it and kind of like, delusional. I remember, I think I was like smacking my cheeks a bit. I was feeling out of it. Yeah, I was just kind of like, it was like, I don't know how to explain it. Like I had been poisoned or something, and I was just like, oh, like what is happening? And then I started to feel some waves of pushing contractions. And at that point, I think is when I got onto the bed. And it was like
I don't even think anyone told you. I think you were just doing the swaying, having your contractions, and then 1 minute you're standing, and then the next you're like getting up on the bed. And I was like, oh, I guess like you just knew. And that's what I see with Sage. I felt like I was more there as like a part of it, whereas for Oakley I think it was more just along for the ride, because you just knew, you just had it, everything was just really flowing well for you, and you just seemed like you were just instinctively new. And I think you even said to all of us, you said, oh, I feel like I gotta start pushing, and then you got up onto the bed and like got onto all fours, and I think shortly after it started getting the urge to push, right? It's
the craziest feeling because obviously this is only my second time doing it, and for me the first time versus this time was so different. Just my instincts, like you said, I knew, okay, I'm in this phase of labor, okay, now it's time to push. It's like I kind of knew the stages and I could feel them. Like I didn't need her to tell me, oh, you're almost 8 centimeters. It's like I knew where I was based on how I was feeling. I started feeling those pushing contractions, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna get into position. I'm gonna do the same thing that felt good the first time around. I'm on the bed. I'm on, I guess, like kind of on all fours, like holding onto the bed. I have a couple of pushing contractions, and they're really intense. They make you feel like you are going to poop all your insides out. So like a weird. I don't know, I've never experienced it. Oh my God. It's just like you can't control them. Your body is just like forcing you to press down and push. I remember after a couple contractions thinking, okay, what did I do with Sage? And I would just do the same thing. Like it's all connecting to the breath and the pelvic floor. So I would, breathe with the contractions, and I felt very intentional about my pushing. What's crazy, I found out after, is I pushed him in 12 minutes. And I believe that was because I was just very in tune and intentional with every single push that I was doing.
Yeah, it's very quick. Everything went very quick.
It didn't feel like that for me, but like I always say, time is irrelevant, I think, when you're in labor.
Well, there was no keeping track of time. And it was just sort of... But then, like, when you were pushing, I think something we forgot to mention, too, is, like, when you had come in and done the checks, they had said they had noticed that the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. So they obviously had to adjust a few things. So even when you were pushing, there was times where they tell you to not push that hard because they were trying to, like... He didn't just come out in one shot. He kind of came out a little bit. His head was out for, I feel like his head was out for a couple of minutes before the rest of him came out because his shoulders also weren't in the proper position. So they had to sort of get in there and
I guess
sort of
one
adjust.
Comes out at a time. It's not
usually both. It's like one comes out and then the other, but he was more, I don't know, both shoulders like this, so getting jammed in there. So they had to kind of like, move his shoulder so you could get the one out. And then also I'm sure like because he had a cord around his neck, they were also like keeping track of that. Because I remember there's a few times they were like, okay, hold, don't
Well,
push.
I remember, so when you have the ring of fire, which is basically when baby is crowning, I remember I paused there and I didn't want to push anymore. I was like, this is just so intense, and also it just feels like you shouldn't be pushing. And what really helped me push through that is, and I didn't do this with Sage, is like I just reached down and through my hospital gown, I felt his head. And I remember thinking like, baby's right there. And like, it's weird because you always hear like moms talk about like using mirrors or touching to help motivate them to push, but that's exactly what it did. Like feeling his little head there, it helped me. I was like, I got this, and I just pushed through that, and then his head came out, and like you said, his head was out for a bit, and then I waited, and then they told me on the next time you have the urge to push with like all your might, because he's got to come out all in one shot. And so I remember skipping a push. I was like, okay, no. It was almost like you're a surfer waiting for that good wave. It is, and you're like, okay, no, that's a weak wave. I'm not gonna take that one. And I remember just waiting, and then the next one was like, yes, this is it. And I just pushed with all my might.
Yeah.
And it's the craziest sensation.
Yeah, and then like. So I was there, and he came out. The crazy thing is, like when I feel like when Sage came out, she was like instantly kind of crying. So when he came out, there was like delay. He didn't cry right away, and I kind of like looked, and I just see him, and he looked limp, like a rag doll, limp. So only for probably like 3, maybe 4 seconds he was limp, but like it felt like an eternity because I was like, oh my God, he's like not breathing. And even then, because we were going to do a delayed cord cutting, and then they were pretty much like right away like, okay, you need to cut the cord because he wasn't responding, and I guess like cutting the cord and clamping the cord can sometimes spark the urge for him to take that breath. Yeah. And luckily it did. It did when they clamped the cord.
Because they were ready to take him to like
that was part of why I had to cut the cord early as well, because if it didn't spark him taking that breath, they would have had to rush him off to a different area for, I guess, like resuscitation, breathing and stuff. So it was a very long 5 seconds because it seemed like he was just limp. And like when he came out and you just see the body really just kind of flailing, it was scary. It was scary. It was definitely scary.
I didn't even know that happened because like as soon as I pushed him out, I was facing the other way, and I just, obviously exhausted, and I was like, oh. And all I remember hearing, I remember them talking about the cord cutting, and I was like, in the back of my head, I was like, why are they cutting the cord? But I didn't know anything was wrong. And then I think by this point, he was starting to breathe. And then I look over at you because you're like, oh, you know, oh my God.
After I cut the cord and then like we knew, and he caught his breath. Because even then, I don't even think I knew what the gender was at first because I was so focused on like him not breathing that I didn't even really think to look. Then after I cut the cord, I took a look and I'm like, oh, it's a boy. And then I looked up and I think we caught each other's eyes and I was like, it's a boy. And then the tears came. Tears from you, probably from me too, I don't know. It was a really magical experience. It was like very cool, I think, to see it like everything unfold the way it did. And I mean, I think like
I was the first person to say no because no one knew the name. And I was like, Oakley.
Yeah, you were the first one to say the name, like, oh, welcome, Oakley. After that, it was kind of a whirlwind after that because then they're checking you, checking for tears, checking him, and like. Do you remember
us? I asked like, did I tear? And I didn't, and like we fist pumped. We're like, yeah, because we did a perineal stretching, which I firmly believe in.
After the baby comes, well, in our case, anyways, not for everyone, of course, but like the after the baby came took longer than the labor and the pushing, because then it's like after the baby comes, it's like a 2-hour period where there's sort of like they have to do the weighing and do all that, and then all the paperwork, so you're kind of just like hanging out in the room, you know,
pressing on my stomach. That's the worst. The belly massages after, and obviously you had to like push out the placenta too,
and it's like, oh, it's probably not a very fun period at that point for you and for any other lady out there. It's probably the rough time.
I will say though, as soon as both times, I felt like as soon as baby came out, the pain just stopped. Like it was just like silence. Mm-hmm. That was motivation too. I knew like once I get this baby out, this pain's gonna stop. And
like, true.
It was just a surreal experience, especially being able to do another unmedicated birth. Like I second guessed myself a lot the second pregnancy.
Yeah, you were a little unsure of yourself before going into it. A little nervous, maybe more because you felt like you said because you knew what it felt like, you felt more nervous.
And also,
you did with Sage, I think, yeah.
And also I had such a good experience with Sage that if it wasn't like that, I think that made me nervous.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I just trusted in my body. I know that's not the experience for everybody, whether or not you want to have an unmedicated birth. Sometimes it ends in an emergency C-section. So I am truly grateful for another positive birth experience, and I just want my experience to help motivate other moms not feel so scared and stressed out about their like pending birth date. And then also, you know, like just believe in yourself if you want to just do an unmedicated birth. Like every woman can do it. Like we are literally built to do it. It's just
I think the one midwife, the quote they said was really good was your body won't put you through more pain than you can handle. It helps you put things in perspective a little bit.
Yeah, like it feels obviously so intense in the moment, but like your body was made to be able to endure that level of intensity.
Yeah, so I think all in all it was a good experience. Like pretty much everything worked out really well. Like I said, there's a little quick scare there.
My recovery and healing's been really good.
Recovery and healing's been good. No tear, no stitches needed. He's been really healthy. So every check he's done has been good. Once we got into our room and we settled down, he had a little 3-4 hour stretch of sleep when we all kind of went down. Like we ordered some Uber Eats to the room because we hadn't had dinner yet. Had dinner, and then like he conked out for like 3-4 hours, and I think we both got a little bit of a snooze then. So it was I'd say a really great experience. And
one of the things that we did that I'm so grateful for was I think you sent out a couple of text messages just saying baby's here.
Yeah.
You didn't say the sex yet. You said baby's here, Nikole's doing great, we'll call you tomorrow. We didn't call anyone that night. It was just
us.
Just
relax.
Us three. It was like us protecting our peace, and that was like one of the best things I feel like we did. And then the next day we're at the hospital all day anyways is when we like FaceTimed everyone. But I'm just really happy we did that because it's like, you know, things are about to get busy and crazy, especially because we have a second child back at home, and I knew she was in good hands, so I felt like we could just really kind of be in the moment. So like I said, if you guys want to watch the video version, I mean this is a video, but like the actual birth vlog, I'm going to link that down below. I'll also link the birth vlog from our first child, Sage, who is now 3, and that birth video actually has like over 6 million views, which is crazy. And I'm just so touched that that video has, you know, really helped support and inspire moms all over the world, and that is why I want to share this story again, and just to help empower women. So I'm very proud of our story, and that we've had a positive experience both times.
Yeah, and we hope everyone else out there does as well.
So that's gonna be it. We gotta go pick up our toddler from daycare, and I'm gonna go chill with this little guy. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye, guys.